again, everybody, with the Packers historian and the star of the show, no matter what his wife says. I love Sheila. Thank you very much. I might have one fan. John Dodds. I'm Tom Pippins. Welcome to our Packers-centric podcast, The Tom Pippins Show with John Dodds. You can Google that and find us. Or right here, our good friends at WSS Sports, WisconsinSportsStream.com. Packers 42. Oakland 24 to go to 6 up, 1 down. Aaron Rodgers, 5 touchdown passes. He runs for 1. He has a perfect quarterback rating. My goodness, number 12. When you consider that his receivers who stepped up, and they played injured, and they certainly, without Devontae Adams, this is not the best crop that you'll find, John. That perhaps should be among the greatest games that he has ever played.
He's played a lot of them. I don't know if I'd go that far. The best game I ever saw him play was the Atlanta playoff game back in January of 2011, where they didn't even scheme for the outside blitzer.
That is the best.
And he juked him, and he was absolutely amazing.
But it has to be up there.
This is up there. What's really exciting about this one, Pip, is that the efficiency he played with in the Matt LaFleur system, and it looks like he's totally embraced it. Where play action fakes, he understands where that's going to be used. They can score. They can go to the outside zone with the wide pitches to the running back. Vitale out in the side. They hit Williams out on the flank. So they spread you out. They can make plays with Rodgers inside the pocket and outside the pocket. Interesting thing, Tony Romo was giving them very much kudos as far as how he was on attack. It's amazing when you consider the quality of the wide receiver. The wide receiver, there was only one draft pick that he played with, and that was the 5th round pick, MVS.
That's amazing.
Other than that,
free agents, right?
Kumaro, Shepard,
Geronimo,
they're all free agents. So it's very interesting that he can, great quarterbacks, and you're paying him $33 million a year, so he can get $9 million kind of play and experiences and results from $600,000 players.
Yeah.
So he can get the results.
John, he had as many incompletions, 6, as he did touchdowns, and 75 yards. That was the lowest number in terms of the drive, right? No drive was below 75 yards. That speaks to that system, and Rodgers buying in, and some of the things that we saw were, okay, they're trying to run the ball. They didn't do a great job, though they had 2 backs, and Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams catch touchdown passes in the same game for the first time in eons. I don't know, it's 15 or some odd years, but even the semblance of it and going to it and putting people in motion, they had the Raiders off balance.
Yeah, it takes a village, and it takes a team. And the interesting thing is they're 6-1. This time, the defense didn't turn the ball over and shorten the field like they did in the Denver game or the games earlier when the offense was sputtering. Now the offense is doing pretty well. I thought the Raiders impressed me in terms of talent, and young talent, and their offensive and defensive lines I thought were very good. Their tight ends were outstanding.
Oh, my goodness.
That running back, Jacobs, is a big-time player.
He had his way, didn't he? With the Packer D?
He was a big-time player, but they had the long drives, and they couldn't be stopped because they're versatile. They can run, they can throw screens, they can go outside, they can go inside. They started using Jimmy Graham a little bit more. The one breakout player over the last 2 weeks is Aaron Jones. Mm-hmm. Aaron Jones, that catch he made for the touchdown where he turned his head around, that is a rare play. And I was trying to think on game day, on Sunday, off the top of my head, I could think of 2 other plays like that. One was against the Raiders. Max McGee did it in Super Bowl II, where he looked one way, Bart threw him the ball the other way, and he found it. The other one was Richard Rodgers in the Hail Mary play at Detroit, where he looked up, looked around, and looked up again, and with a whole different angle on his eyes and his head. That's a very rare play. But also, Aaron Jones is starting to pick up the blitz. There were a couple times where they were blitzing, he was picking it up. He catches the ball outside. He makes the nice cutback run. He's becoming more of an Edgar Bennett in terms of intangibles, like those little intangibles that make you a good back. and he's better than Bennett in that he's got the home run hit threat. He's got the home run talent
That different
to take
gear,
it the distance.
Take it up. John, you said something that sparked in my mind something that apparently Aaron Jones said. It might have been to Jason Wilde in the locker room. I'd like to get your perspective on Oakland, talking about the green and gold in a moment. But he said, we're not thinking as much. We're reacting now because we're starting to get this Matt LaFleur offense, and that really can make a difference.
The Oakland Raiders were saying that A-Rod was coming up to the line of scrimmage, and one of the reasons why he's so difficult to defend is because he's so smart. And he was going up to the line, and this reminded me, he hasn't done that earlier in the year because he's still learning the offense, but he went up to the line and he'd look, and he's got 2 plays that they've called, and he's barking out signals, and defenders used to tell me that they would switch something and he would smile and switch to counter it. And that's what the Oakland Raider was telling me, that he was countering it. He's so smart. So the other thing is, I was talking to Max Crosby, who had a sack in the game, but had
He's an impressive young player, isn't he? Yeah.
Good young player. He was saying that they don't rush him to get to they don't get to him in the back. What they do is they contain him. I said, is that what you'd want to do? He says, yes, we try to contain him in the pocket because he's more dangerous outside of the pocket. So that means that as long as you're not coming up the A gap in his face, he can sit in the pocket, possibly not a lot of pressure on the outside, and he can step up and he can wait a little bit, and then he makes his moves down certain gaps. So it's all coming together for him. And talking to the defensive backs of Oakland, it's hard to plaster those guys for 3 and 4 and 5 seconds. And average wide receivers can get very good in a hurry.
And you have been talking about this offensive line, and they have really kept Rodgers clean. I believe 1 sack. Is there something like 7 in the last 6 games or 6 in the last 7? I think our friend Bill Michaels was saying on the sports thread here on WSS.
Yeah.
So that has to bode well, doesn't it?
It does. As I mentioned before the season started, I thought they were 12 and 4 if Brian Bulaga was healthy. I wasn't expecting Brian Bulaga having his best season. He's been great.
And he has, in your mind, huh?
He's been great. He's been the top offensive
That's saying
lineman.
a lot because he's played at a high level when able to play.
And so has the other players. I think Bakhtiari looks solid, probably playing with an injury. Mm-hmm. The rookie Jenkins looks very good, and the guru Larry McCarron was saying he's a player. Like, what do you think of him? He's a player. Yeah. So that means a lot.
Rock said that, you're
Lindsley,
good.
Lindsley is solid, and everybody's coming together. Even the free agent from Denver, who plays right guard,
Turner. Yeah.
Turner. Thank you. Turner's come together. He's played well the last 2 weeks, so it's all there. The offensive line is fired up because they play with more tight end sets, and so there's better blocking at the point of attack. So they're much more fired up there. Just get the impression they're buying in. They're on a roll. I don't know how good Oakland's defense was at certain positions. Their defensive line looked terrific. Their linebackers are a little bit slow, a little bit weak. Vontez Burfict wasn't playing there. He's suspended for the year. But I suspect when Green Bay plays a little bit better defense against better defenses, things won't quite be as open. But it's definitely optimistic to see how there's been growth. One other player that I would say that's really grown is Alan Lazard. Mm-hmm. He dropped a pass in the second quarter. But over the years, I've noticed that younger wide receivers will drop passes down that sideline looking back into the sun. It's a real tough. Greg Jennings had a tough time his first couple of years. Cobb, Freeman. It's a tough sun field when you're throwing the ball. You're going down that east sideline, and you're looking back into the sun.
An observation you only get from a man who's been on the Packers scene at Lambeau and elsewhere for 40 years.
He was looking at the safety coming over, no question, but he was distracted. But later in the game, he made that catch where he high-pointed a ball. He had to have jumped 11 feet up at about the 10-yard line in the red zone to grab it. He also made some very good blocks in the running game. So This guy seems to be a very, very good player.
Great size, wonderful intangibles. All right, now on Tuesday, we find out that Mohamed Sanu goes from Atlanta to the Patriots, of all people. I mean, the embarrassment of riches.
Yeah.
Unbelievable for a second-round pick. And then San Francisco has Emmanuel Sanders. They work a deal with Denver. And again, costly. Second-round pick to the Pats, third-round pick, and I think that John Elway for Denver is going to get a fourth and give away a fifth. That's a lot, but you said, why couldn't the Packers do that? The trade deadline is a week away. There are concerns on the defense. You got to stop the run. You have this Leonard Hamilton, the big run stuffer for the Jets, was mentioned. Do you need a hybrid-type player at linebacker? If you're Brian Gutekunst, you see what's going on. You know what you have here potentially, especially when Devontae Adams gets back. What are you thinking right now?
I'm thinking at tight end, you have Jace Sternberger that you drafted in the third round. He's coming possibly off the injured reserve. We'll know in the next 2 weeks. So he's coming. I think your wide receivers, you got Adams coming back, hopefully within the next 2 weeks. He'll begin practicing. He has the ligament damage in that turf toe. I would say that the biggest opportunity would be getting a big defensive tackle who can stuff the run. Because Kenny Clark is having little problems where he's leaving games, where he's got a calf injury, he's got some nagging ankle injuries.
Whatever, yeah.
Kenny Clark is so important, and I remember there's 2 acquisitions in midseason that made the Packers successful over the last, say, 20 years at defensive line. One was Howard Green. They picked up Howard Green in that Super Bowl 2010 year when they had a bunch of injuries to Colin Jenkins and some of the other players. They plugged in B.J. Raji. They plugged him in, and they were no worse for wear. In fact, he was the guy that hit Roethlisberger that caused the interception to Nick Collins in the Super Bowl. So Howard Green was a great, great acquisition that year. The other one was one of the best acquisitions ever during season. It was Grady Jackson.
Mm-hmm.
That was in the 2003 season. He became the best player on the Packer defense, and they picked him up after New Orleans cut him. So that's what I would do. I think you would probably take no higher than a fifth. That I don't think they're looking for a third or a fourth. That would surprise me. But find somebody who's big, who can stuff the run. The other thing is maybe a returner, because I'm a little bit nervous. Wish they hadn't traded Trevor Davis to Oakland, looking back on it. Mm-hmm. Hindsight's 20/20
sure
with that.
Yeah.
And Shepard looks a little bit shaky on the kickoffs. One thing I noticed on the game on Sunday was how slippery the field was.
Again.
There was at least 15 slips that I counted where players are trying to change weight and change directions and put their foot down. I know Jackson fell down and slipped when that last touchdown to the tight end, Waller at the Raiders. On the MVS 75-yard touchdown run, the safety was guarding him, slipped as when he made his cut. So I don't know what. I hope nobody gets hurt.
Right.
But
and weather was not a factor this time.
Not a factor at all.
It should have been slippery. You saw some of that against Detroit. So I don't know if it's the surface, the turf there, or something that the Lambeau Field experts need to look at. But so you're okay offensively, though, when you're talking about Adams, admittedly, when he gets back, but a fifth rounder and free agents, is there enough? And you're hoping Jay Sternberg. Now I'm not. But from the standpoint of debating, is that enough to get you to a Super Bowl?
I think it is enough. The New Orleans has a very good team. New Orleans is probably the team to beat. I don't know enough about San Francisco.
It's amazing, too, with Bridgewater, and God bless him, with all he went through. The man almost lost his leg in that series when he was with the Vikings. You'll recall, John, it was in training camp, a practice, if the doctor doesn't do the right thing. So kudos to him, and wait until they get the guy back in Drew Brees. Right.
They have a great team. Now, I see Kimura is hurt. The running back just is nicked up. If they can get Adams back, Allen Lazard, the growth in Allen Lazard and the growth in Aaron Jones. The interesting thing also is how they can use Jamal Williams, depending on if it's we talked about this last week, if it's a straightaway power team, Jamal Williams.
I love the way he runs, right? But it's just fast forward.
Straight through.
Like a train.
So Detroit, he was good for Detroit. Mm-hmm. While Dallas, a quicker
Yeah.
zone team, now you can use Aaron Jones on cuts. And so I think they're okay at running back. They're okay at offensive line. If Adams comes back, they might be good at wide receiver. Just hope they stay healthy, especially in the offensive line.
And 12 putting himself into the MVP discussion with the 5 touchdown passes, fifth time in his career, I believe, and he was marvelous. There's no questioning that quarterback rating that you talked about. He is truly buying in, and that I think is what is exciting. So now we fast forward, understanding that you have to get some breaks. If Derek Carr, doesn't mess up here in the goal, reaching out for the TD, that was a 14-point swing because the Pack got the ball and scored, right?
Right.
And then they came out of the locker room in the third quarter. Now it's 21 points, and it turns into a blowout. You go to Kansas City. You said it before, right? You heard it from Bud Grant, the Vikings' legendary coach, and he said it's not who you play, but when you play him. Patrick Mahomes probably going to be out of that game. So now you have Matt Moore, a journeyman, who was coaching his high school football team as an assistant when he got the call to come to play for Andy Reid and company.
Yeah, it's interesting. It'll be interesting. It could be a tremendous break. Now, I had the Packers actually 7-0 right now. I had them beating Philadelphia. I didn't realize Philadelphia was that good, although they've kind of fallen away in the last couple weeks. But I had them losing at Kansas City and then at Los Angeles when they're playing the Chargers. I thought those were 2 back-to-back pretty tough road games. Ironically, it is an unusual year where everything seems to be falling right. The opportunity to win in Kansas City is much greater than it was. Kansas City's defense is rated very poorly, but I always harken back to the 2011 Packer season when the Packer offense was historic and the defense was terrible. Now, granted, Nick Collins got hurt, but when your offense is that good and that efficient and you don't run the ball, you pass the ball, your defense is on the field a lot. And the other teams are usually down by 2 touchdowns or more, so they spread you out and they're going all the time throwing deep. And so they get a lot of yards. And I think that if you have a running game or the other team runs, it shortens the game. Your stats look a lot better as a defense. So I think Kansas City's defense is a little bit better than their 30th ranking. So I think they have good pass rush. And also the other problem is Rodgers is much more dominant at home because he can go up to the line of scrimmage and he can call out various things that the defense is doing. He can make adjustments. He can't do that on the road. And where it's really noisy, Kansas City and Seattle, the defensive outside linebackers and defensive ends see the ball.
And Arrowhead is going to be loud.
It's going to be loud.
Yeah.
They have an extra step on Bulaga and Bakhtiari because if Bulaga and Bakhtiari look at the center snap and do this, that's not as they're going to miss where the opponent is. So it's a huge advantage on the road. This is going to be a real tough one, but the opportunity is there for them to win the next 2, which I wouldn't have guessed that preseason. And now, if you win the next 2, you have home field advantage possibly or a bye, and you start messing with that. San Francisco, the Packers are going to play them. We're going to see how good they are coming up in the next month. San Francisco is one of those teams where if you have top 10 draft picks for 5 to 7 years, all of a sudden it clicks and it shows. It's within your salary cap. The defensive line they have is really pass rushing with 3 and 4 guys, but they're also top 5 picks. So you expect that. So that happens every now and then. It happened to the Rams in the late 90s, Baltimore in the early 2000s, San Francisco again with Harbaugh, where all of a sudden you have all these good teams and you're solid at just about every position. Why? Because you've had these top picks. Even I was worried about the Bears being that way too. The Bears had picked up a lot of solid defenders,
Boy, haven't
linebackers.
they fallen off? And Trubisky struggling, shoulder notwithstanding. And as you said, if they miss on him, that's a big loss. Finish that point, please.
Trubisky, listening to what the media said about Trubisky, I mean, I thought, I don't know what he is, an outcast in Chicago, which is amazing to hear because just 3 months ago he was the toast waiting for that step up, but he might be losing confidence. You don't know if he, what track he is on. Is he, is he a Gus Frerotte or is he going to be, a really good player? You don't know yet, and it may not be in Chicago. But as a Packer fans could live with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because look at the quarterback situation in Minnesota. The way Kirk Cousins has played the last couple of games, they could be a Super Bowl team. If he goes back to the bad Kirk Cousins, they may not make the postseason party. And then we get to the Packers quarterback. John, 350 touchdown passes, fastest past Drew Brees in history, and the second man in NFL annals to have 5 TD passes, talking about the Oakland game, a rushing TD, 400 yards passing, and no picks. Washington's Mark Rippon was the first. So if he plays at this level, maybe they can get by offensively. What is your prediction in Kansas City? I'm starting to think you believe they can go to 7-1.
Well, I had it all week. I had Kansas City 30, Green Bay 27.
Okay.
But I'm leaning I'm leaning toward. I want to go with my system, and I have Kansas City. I guess I'm going to go with that. I'm going to pick a Kansas City win. It's going to be. The problem is that Kansas City is going to be jacked. Kansas City's on the road, and they also have that extra 3 days to prepare. They had the Thursday game where he got hurt. I think they're going to come up with something where it's going to be difficult. I remember they
got a tight end. They've got a good running game. There's Darnell Savage. I sure hope he can. He was certainly missed in that Oakland game. Well, he has been actually. Was the last two because he didn't play against Detroit either, did he?
Bad things happen at Kansas City.
Yeah.
And Packers had their one loss in the regular season in 2011 down at Kansas City.
Remember that one
with Romeo Crennel. But again, Greg Jennings was hurt. So will Devontae Adams play? Can they get the maximum out? Aaron Rodgers cannot be as dominant on the road in the noise. On the other hand, he's so efficient now, and they're creating so much problem with even the fullback. And that's another thing the offensive line was saying, that the fact that there's a power fullback involved along with the blocking tight ends, they're much more fired up about being more aggressive.
Danny Vitale was really good. How did he get a couple of long catch and runs?
He really was. And so, yeah, I'm really torn on this one. I still think, I guess I would stay with the Packers. The Packers loss.
We are going Packers now.
I'm going to stay with the Packer loss. I'm going to stay with my.
All right.
But it's going to be an interesting one. But they'll have the chance. But maybe you can shut those people up with some efficiency. And he was efficient. Aaron Rodgers was as efficient. I think that Brett Favre is the best football player maybe ever, or since the merger.
Football player, right.
Football player. Aaron Rodgers is the best quarterback. I think he's better than Brady because
when he's at his best, he
can make plays outside the pocket, on the run. And that's what separates him.
Yeah. Well, I would definitely bet the farm on your prediction, not mine, but I'm going to go with Packers. I think it'll be a close game. I think they pull it out by a field goal or so. John Dodds, great work again. Good to be with you, my friend.
And you're the star of the show.
No, well,
okay, thank you.
We can talk about that till kingdom come, but I think people are ready to move on to something else. So for John Dodds, our Packers historian, I'm Tom Pippins. Thanks for tuning into our podcast. Again, just Google the Tom Pippins Show with JD, or catch us right here at WSS Sports, WisconsinSportsStream.com. Appreciate it, everybody, and God bless.